Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the Thriving Lives podcast, to our weekly Zoom call. Renee, how you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing all right, doing all right. We today's topic, we have Thanksgiving obviously coming up this coming week, and really this will kind of be a catch-all because with Christmas and all the other holidays on the horizon, this is the same conversation we're going to be having as with thriving. I mean, as with Thanksgiving. So a lot of this will kind of be applicable for the next really like 6 weeks until the new year gets here, and then obviously you can still apply a lot of these things to really any holiday, any special occasion, birthdays, anniversaries, stuff like that. But yes, we have Thanksgiving coming up. Just a heads up, there will not be a Zoom call next week because that'll be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So enjoy your time with your family and all that type of stuff. But
Do we cancel check-in on Thursday or move it to Friday, or what do we do?
so good question with that. Ultimately what it comes down to that is I still want you guys checking in if you feel like you need to check in. Obviously, Thanksgiving is going to kind of throw things off for everybody. I'm not going to be responding on Thursday. I think we have another Thanksgiving on Friday as well. So if you do check in, just expect a delayed response time for myself. I don't know about you, Renee, but if you're doing great, you know, we're going to kind of cover what that's going to look like today, and definitely on your guys' check-in over the next couple of days. We'll kind of touch base, especially if you have any specific questions. Maybe you missed a Zoom call or whatever the case is. We will kind of address things as well. But ultimately, next week, most people are going to be celebrating Thanksgiving in some way, shape, or form. So enjoy yourself with that. We're going to kind of talk about it today. If you want to check in, go for it. If you feel like you just need to do it for the consistency or for the accountability, go for it. But if you want to take the week off as well, that's great as well. And it obviously reduces what Renee and I are doing as well, if all is well for you guys. But does that answer your question, Renee?
Yeah, I mean, my clients can feel free to still check in.
Yeah. And of course, like I love hearing from you guys, and I love, just for consistency's sake, I never want to tell you to take a week off check-ins because it keeps people with the right momentum and keeps their head in the game and staying reflective, which actually we'll kind of talk about here in a second as well. But Renee, how was your last week? I know we've been
Uh,
making some changes to your lifestyle here recently as well. Um, what's up?
yeah, so to kind of recap for people who are new here, I have been working out at 5 a.m. for the last like 2 years now. Had a pretty good steady routine with that. Now with having my dental hygiene job and coaching job, I am trying to balance things out a little bit more. And so sometimes in the mornings, my workouts get a little bit cut short. So I'm not lifting as heavy or just don't have as much time on things. And so we're trying to shift my workouts to heavier, longer ones on the weekends instead of the 5 a.m. during the week. So I'm switching it to 4 days a week now, trying to do Wednesday afternoon with Friday, Saturday, Sunday workouts. Um, and the other point of that is to prioritize sleep because sleep is important, especially to help build and grow muscle, which is one of my goals. Um, but I have such a big routine of going to bed at 8 p.m., waking up at 4 a.m. And this week, not and last week, I think we tried it last week too, not being on that. It's actually you would think it'd be easy to sleep in, but it's not. I'm having a lot of struggles with it. So it's at nighttime, I feel like I'm not prioritizing my bedtime routine like I usually do. So I'm just messing around on my phone. My screen time is not good.
You have more time. It's just like, what I do to myself on the weekends is like, I don't have to get up there early tomorrow, even though my body's going
Yeah.
to wake me up at the normal time. Then I end up cutting out my sleep. It's kind of what it sounds like you're doing.
Yeah, and I do track my sleep, and so my scores have not been good. Which is good though. It helps me see and like reflect, and I always track like late screen time or just things like that. Um, just being like conscious of it. But the benefits of moving the workouts is I do have more time, and that's been really cool. I've been more creative. I've been able to create more workouts, which is great. So yeah, I'm just adjusting
It's just a
to
transition.
to this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a transition time period, which is, you know, a big part of what we're all doing here is trial and error. As our life changes, as our priorities change, or our time changes, is, you know, there comes periods of trial and error where we have to kind of adapt and see what's working, what's not working, reflect on it, and then again continue adapting as needed to. So Renee, that's what you're doing, and you're kind of in that transition period that's uncomfortable. It's different than what you're used to, but you're, you know, you're noticing the pros to it, you're noticing where you're struggling at, and then obviously the biggest piece of this is that you are reflecting, so then you can think about, okay, where am I struggling at within this change, and how can I make that adjustment? And really, once we give it long enough, then we can truly see, is this actually better for me long term, or is this something that's just kind of working against what was working well for me prior? And then we can always, you know, revert back to what we were doing before. But yeah, good reflection. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with at every stage, you know, at all the different stages in their journey, with thriving lives, but obviously on their own as well. And the biggest thing is you are reflecting on it so that you know what's going well and where you need to kind of make adjustments with. Right now, I'm kind of going through my own little transitions, obviously with the baby and whatnot. I'm finally getting back into the gym. However, right now that's mainly with Nicole and with the baby. We're taking her with us to Body Shop, which is nice because it's a gym that we can bring her to and just kind of carry around in the carrier. However, that's its own set of obstacles because, you know, we're checking on her every few minutes as we're kind of carrying her around, or she needs a changing, or she needs to be fed because she's, you know, cluster feeding here and there. So then, you know, I'm going out into the car or whatever the case is to feed her in the middle of my workout, which has definitely been a transition. So right now, you know, Nicole and I are just giving ourselves grace that, you know, we just had a baby and we are just getting to the gym is a win right now. And then yeah, I mean, she's adjusting, we're adjusting, we'll kind of get through it together. But anyway, though, so before we kind of dive into the big topic of the day, a couple things that I wanted to kind of, you know, note from this past week in terms of conversations that I've had with clients, and things like that. So here's a perk to checking in, a perk of reflecting as well. So this is just an excerpt from a client's check-in about some wins they felt over this last week. Overall, I feel great. The sleep aspect is obviously not ideal, but the weight is continuing to go down while the strength is climbing. Even if I have an off plan meal like yesterday, it's still nothing in comparison to my average day of eating 6 to 7 months ago. The best part is I can feel and see the difference the good habits are making. I am still striving to be more consistent with getting all my meals in, but I am learning the effects of specific foods are having on my body and my overall performance, and it feels great. Next year's goals are already starting to form in my head. So what's awesome about that is this client right here, I can't remember who it was, male or female, but they've been consistent with checking in just based off of what that check-in says right there. And because of that, they're noticing all the different wins that have come over the last 6 or 7 months. And so that is the power of consistency in making those check-ins. You know, when somebody isn't checking in, usually, and this isn't going to be an entire conversation on this, but when somebody's not checking in, you know, barring if they're sick or traveling, 9 times out of 10, it's because, you know, they had a bad week. And they don't want to talk about it. You know, when we don't check in after a week like that, though, it usually results in another bad week. And then we miss another check-in. And before too long, you know, they become embarrassed and want to avoid talking to their coach, myself, or you know, being accountable to themselves and honest with themselves. It's just easier to just avoid it. So actually this week, and every now and then I'll go do this as well, not necessarily every week, but whenever I have the time to, is I'll go reach out to clients that have been missing some check-ins. So I reached out to multiple clients this week that have been MIA. And this one in particular, she's a teacher and she's been kind of MIA the past, you know, few weeks or maybe even a few months at this point. You know, so I sent her a text, just asking her to kind of catch me up on what's been going on and get back to check-ins. And I could have said some of the things I just mentioned up above. And she then sent a check-in to me, catch me up on how life has been. And as expected, all the issues I just stated, in terms of, you know, being embarrassed after she's been struggling and things started to snowball. And then she really didn't want to talk about it. All those things were kind of happening to her. So after she checked in and filled me in on all the struggles that she had been kind of going through and had fallen off and things like that, I said, you know, I'm so proud of you for responding to my text and completing this check-in. The school year or whatever your busy season is, you know, for anybody else that's listening here, is always tough. And it's a tough time to make changes, but it's the most important time too. You know, this is her career, and it's important for her to start building the right habits even during the most stressful times of that year so that they can kind of carry her through the rest of the year. It just takes us being, adaptable and being more intentional about controlling the controllables as often as possible until they're really ingrained in your life. And, these habits, these mindsets and balance, getting that stuff ingrained into our life. And then, until then, though, the check-ins need to be a top priority. So ultimately with all that stuff is keep checking in, during these tough times over the next couple of months. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be lots of things that make you feel like you're not being perfect, and it's okay. Just keep reflecting and keep checking in, and you'll be golden with it. Now to kind of get to the topic about how we handle it. Renee, what's up?
I also had a client this week that I had that wasn't checking in, just life kind of got crazy busy for her. And so we had set up a time to hop on a quick phone call and just kind of retouch base and go over her expectations, my expectations, and things like that. Just because when you do have those like certain days off, I think a lot of people think, oh, like now I failed, I shouldn't even continue the program. It's all worthless now.
Yeah.
And so just having that short conversation with your coach is so much more beneficial to just hop right back on track.
Yep.
Because it's not a waste. It's not like you ruined the whole program. And it just allows us to understand you better and you to understand us better, and the fact that we're going at your pace and when to hold your hand, when to give you grace, and when to encourage you to kind of do a little bit more if you can.
100%. And that's again, a reason why I hate challenges and like 8-week programs, or like even like the Whole30 program and stuff like that, is that, it's usually a month long. And with that, it's so easy that, well, if I screwed up one day, I only had a few more weeks left anyway, so screw the rest of the weeks. I'm just going to give up on it. And ultimately, whenever we're talking about all this, it's a lifestyle. It's ever evolving, it's ever changing, and it's a lifetime of putting emphasis on this and making these things a priority. So we never fail if we just, mess up one day or mess up 1 week, or shit, even if we mess up like this client, she hadn't checked in for a couple months. She could very easily, what clients used to do is be like, I give up, I quit the program, whatever the case is. I've sucked the last few months and it's just hard for me to accept that. So I'd rather quit than figure it out and communicate about it and figure out how to get back on the horse. And in her situation, she did the hard thing that's ultimately going to be the best thing for her, is that she checked in, and now we can kind of start building that momentum back up and get her moving in the right direction. Now, for the topic that we're kind of talking about here, with it being the holidays, we have, give or take 6 or so weeks for the rest of the year. Now, over this time, can we make physical progress during the next few months? Of course, we can make physical progress. I have a lot of clients that are starting now, that started a few weeks ago, and that will start in the next coming weeks, and they will still see a lot of physical progress. However, what we want to do is we want to manage our expectations for all the things we can truly accomplish over the next 6 weeks. For some people, the holidays are really not that big of a challenge. Whether they don't see a lot of family, or they don't do a lot of socializing and stuff like that. It might be easier for them to really, crush it. But for this is more for the people that really have a lot of family and social gatherings and things like that. About how do we figure out and get through this time without totally sabotaging where we are. So the first thing we want to do is manage our expectations. Over the next 6 weeks, ideally what we can do is, worst case scenario, we can come out at the end of this by the new year, right where we are today. Absolute worst case scenario. Instead of digging a really big hole, which is what the average person does, is once the holidays hit, they're like throwing caution to the wind, and they're just going to do everything and anything and not care about what they're eating and not care about what they're doing. They'll be like, who cares if I fell off workouts? I'll get back on come January. And that's the same type of person that stays in that cycle for months and years and years and decades, is that they allow themselves to totally fall off because there's always another Monday. There's always the new year they can get back on track. And that's why they never fully, stay committed year round with this stuff and stay consistent with it. And they're always
kind of, I think too, of like where it's important to know your expectations and the coach's expectations of, just because you're not doing 100% of the program does not mean that you're failing. Just because you missed a workout doesn't mean that the entire week is a waste. Or just because you had 2 cheat meals instead of 1.
Yep.
It does not mean that
100%
everything's over.
So the challenge during these next 6 weeks, in my mind, is we know that we're not going to get all of our workouts in most of these, at least not all of these weeks. We're not going to be able to control as many of our meals as maybe what we could have the past couple months. But there's still all the days leading up to these events, and there's the meals the day of. if you're going to have a Thanksgiving dinner, but you have nothing else going on during the day, how far off are you going to be? You're going to be off during dinner time that night. And I want you to enjoy yourself. I don't want you going into there with diet eyes being like, oh, I can't have the carbs, or I can't have this or that. I want you to go in there and enjoy whatever you would normally enjoy. Now, ideally, one of the things that we can all do with majority of these meals, I'm not saying all of them, majority of them, we can go in with positive intentions. We can go in thinking I'm going to be protein centric. I'm going to start and fill up on more of that nutrient dense foods during that, so that I'm not going to necessarily overindulge to the point that I'm sick with all of the, quote unquote fun foods with it. That being the sides and the desserts and stuff like that. But at the same time, I want you to enjoy that stuff as well. So there's a couple different approaches that we can take with this. Number one, come into it, like I just said, come into it thinking I'm going to be protein centric. I'm going to still make fairly clean choices. I'm going to try not to overeat and things like that. Now, let's say you go the opposite end of that spectrum and you overeat during these meals. Whatever choice you end up doing with that, I don't care so much about that choice as what do you do right now? So we have 7 days until Thanksgiving. Let's say you don't have any Thanksgiving meals coming up until Thanksgiving Day. How do you control the next 7 days? You already know that Thanksgiving Day, you're going to have something. Maybe you have something Thursday, Friday, and Saturday next week. So if you know you have those 3 meals coming up, the next 7 days, you should be even more intentional, because number one, you're going to enjoy those meals with it. So I want you to really focus in, what can I control the next 7 days leading up to that? And then, like I said before, when you get to Thursday, if you know you have that Thanksgiving meal coming up, then what do you do for breakfast and lunch and maybe your snacks leading up to it? Do you just starve yourself all day? Do you say, well, I'm going to mess up tonight, so I might as well just eat absolutely whatever I want? And that's where we're lose sight of controlling the controllables. So during that day on Thursday leading up to that Thanksgiving dinner meal, we want to still stay protein centric with it. So what I personally would do on these days, knowing that I'm going to have a ton of carbs, know I'm going to have a ton of fat during those meals, is I'm going to stick to lean protein options during the day leading up to it. That way I'm not going into that meal absolutely starving. I'm going into it fairly satiated. I'm going into it with the nutrients that I need that are aligned with my goals. But then I'm going to go into that meal, and because I've crushed the last 7 days and all my meals during that day, I'm going to feel totally fine and not guilty about eating what I want to eat for that Thanksgiving meal. And then again, if we have another meal on Friday and Saturday, I'm going to do the same things. I'm going to control what I can, stay protein centric, drink a ton of water. If I can get workouts in on those days, I'm definitely going to get those in as well. But then again, I'm going to enjoy myself for those meals. We don't do this stuff. I don't stay consistent with my diet year round so that I can go into the holidays and not enjoy myself, so that I can go into a vacation or a birthday dinner and not enjoy myself. That's not balance. Again, what we're doing with this is not an 8-week challenge of how strict can you stay for 8 weeks. It's how do I find balance in life? And all these special occasions, holidays, birthdays, gatherings like that, those are all special occasions that a well-balanced life includes all those things. You're not going to be super rigid during those. It's how do we control all the rest of them? How do we control the days after Thanksgiving? Are you going to bring home a ton of pie leftovers and cakes and cookies and all the sides and stuff, and then be eating on those, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday the following week? Because now you just took one meal, what could have just been one exciting, awesome, tasty meal, and turn it into 6 of those meals because you brought home the leftovers. So that's what I would recommend doing is, my grandma, whoever it is I'm eating Thanksgiving dinner with, I'm not going to take any leftovers home. And if I do, it's probably going to be the ham and the turkey and stuff like that. I might take home one thing for that evening that I'm going to have dessert wise, but I'm not going to take home enough that I'm going to have something every single day for that. Because again, now I'm taking that one meal and spreading it out and turning it into 6 or 7 off days instead of just the one that it was designated to be. And that's how I can control those controllables. And then again, we get back on track as soon as we can. So if after Thursday you have nothing else coming up for Thanksgiving, then boom, you should be back on track come Friday through the weekend. And then now you just minimize any sort of damage you had. You enjoyed yourself, but now you're back on track and you're goal focused. And again, now if you keep doing that for the next few weeks, you do that leading up to Christmas or any of the other holidays happening in December, then you can enter January in the spot you're currently at, if not in a better position. But mentally and habit wise and mindset wise, you are now battle tested. You have now practiced what it's like during tough weeks. How do I control the controllables? So that's where we can make truly the most amount of progress, is how do we control what we can during maybe suboptimal times when it comes to our diet or workouts. Renee, you got any thoughts on that?
I did a second ago and it just
Cool.
went away, but I guess the only thing I
That's
would
what
say
happens
would
when I
be,
just keep rambling.
yeah, I know. I would say if you're someone that makes it, like if you're someone that sees the new year as like a time to make goals and things like that, just if you think about those goals right now, think about how much more progress you could already have, like a kickstart on those
Yep.
if you just stayed consistent right now. And that's the thing, there's going to be Christmas, there's going to be like work parties and all the other events. Um, and so it's not to say that you can't enjoy those, or like we said, if you have two cheat meals, like everything's ruined. Um, but just kind of being aware of the events. And then also, I think a good mindset is to not get into the habit of, oh, well, I had Thanksgiving dinner, so now I need to go work out twice as hard Friday morning. Like, no, that's not what we need to do. We need to continue doing the original plan, not make up for a meal you enjoyed.
I'm really happy you brought that up because that is a lot of people, and I'll still get those messages on just normal weeks where I really went crazy on Sunday, so I did 2 days, Monday through Wednesday this week. And we should not be overcorrecting, because again, that's what you've probably done. If that's your mindset now, that's probably what your mindset has been the last 20 years. And has that worked for you at this point? Most likely not. And number two, mentally, that's way harder on yourself. You're beating yourself up and you're not giving yourself any grace to just live life. And you're out of balance. You're either doing everything 100% full tilt, hardcore about it, or you're doing nothing. And that's what we want to get out of, is we want to raise the baseline of, our worst days are still pretty good days. Our worst days are not absolutely terrible. And even if they were absolutely terrible, we're just back on track the next day. We're not going to overcorrect it. That's another reason why I don't ask your guys' calories, how much you burn during cardio sessions or during workouts or whatever the case is, because first off, those things are going to be highly inaccurate anyway. They're not going to give you a true number. But then two, all that does is teach you, or is it instills in your mind that I need to go work out double to burn off the extra calories I had. I can eat like shit because I went and did 3-hour long workouts. That's not how it works. Again, one of the things that it comes back to, and not that anybody here is a bodybuilder, but when we look at what a bodybuilder is, because obviously, that's what the medals here on my wall are from, because that's my hobby that I do. That's, how I kind of got started in this field in the first place. But what we want to look at is, if that's how people achieve perfect bodies, absolute minimal body fat and all that type of stuff, what are the things they're doing? They're not doing that. They're not going to eat like shit so they can go work out twice as long and twice as hard. They're just going to minimize how much they're eating like shit, and then they're going to stay on their on their workout plans, on their sleep schedule, and things like that. It's just consistency over time is all we really, really want to strive for. And then when you have the cheat meal, when you have these occasions, it's not going to be super detrimental. So we don't need to overcorrect it. We just need to get back on plan the next day. And that's really what this time is all about. I love when clients start during this time period, because if you're constantly, checking in every single week, we will get there where mentally it's okay if I had a bad day. It's okay that I had Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever the case is. I got back on track the next day. And that to me is one of the biggest wins that somebody can have, especially when they're just getting started in this journey for themselves. My friends that are on the call right now, do you guys have anything to add? Any questions, any fears, any struggles, any experiences with any of this stuff? No worries if not. Just want to give you guys a floor to speak for a minute. Renee, do you know what you're doing for Thanksgiving yet? What's your plan? How are you going to attack Thanksgiving next week?
So I'm probably not the best person to ask because I have 5,000 allergies.
Okay, yep, that's right.
So I generally don't have the option to indulge in things.
Yep.
So I'll have ham, I'll make my protein rice, that I always have anyways.
Yeah.
And then I think my mom tries to make like a gluten-free green bean casserole or something like that. But again, for me, I don't really get the satisfaction of having food for pleasure in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
However, what I do like to do is get like a special treat if I can. So either like a gluten-free bundt cake, or I'll go to Billy's grocery and get like a special dessert that is
Nice.
gluten-free.
So
And that'll
you
kind of be
still
like
have a
my
way to
special
indulge.
thing.
You still have a way to indulge. You just have to be more
Correct.
intentional about what you're doing as opposed to just showing up and doing whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't really have the option to just show up and forego all
Yeah.
caution to the wind. I'm still going to eat a healthy, balanced dinner.
Yeah.
I guess the difference for me is I usually don't eat like processed meat or things like that. So, I mean, ham, whatever, but
I know what you mean though. I know what
that's
you mean.
different for me. So it is a different meal, but it's not a holiday that I won't
Not it's not as
Thanksgiving.
free as what most people are going to go into with.
No.
And
So
but
I'm a bad example to ask, but I will say what I probably would end up doing is like I don't know, I would say depends what I have like meal prepped for that day. Like I'll have my pasta for lunch, but I know my family is a family that will tend to have like a special breakfast and then they'll have snacks like while they're cooking.
yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're just constantly snacking as opposed to eating a meal, then
Mhm.
yeah, you're gonna be starving when it comes to Thanksgiving dinner. And so like Marcus was saying, I think it's probably smart to have that breakfast and lunch so you're not just starving, even though meal times are probably weird on Thanksgiving. Some people
Yeah.
eat at like 4 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. or
Yeah.
just random things like that. Um, but that is my approach, I guess.
No, I think it's a great approach. But one thing I will say is that, I know that you have, the certain like food intolerances and allergies and things of that nature, but a lot of people have that. And a lot of people, number one, they don't ever make the lifestyle changes. And number two, especially on the holidays, they're going to indulge because, well, it's Thanksgiving and that's what you're supposed to do. And they're not listening to their body. And so that's what, yes, you're going to be uncomfortable, but a lot of people live uncomfortable with that. And so I think what's great about you though is even during those special times where most people are going to make excuses for that and say
Mhm.
that, well, it's Thanksgiving, everybody gets to have fun, so I should get to have fun. You understand the consequences that will come after that, the cause and the effect of it all, and are understanding that I'm going to enjoy what I can on that day. I'm going to figure out what my special foods can be that are still going to be indulgent, that are still going to be fun, and not what the norm is for me, but not totally sabotage yourself where now you're dealing with gut issues until New Year's, which is what a lot of
Yeah,
people do
so
during this time
that's
because
the
it could
thing.
be 6 weeks of this.
Yeah, I don't have like the consequence of, oh my gosh, if I overeat on Thanksgiving, I'm gonna gain a pound or my
Mhm.
pants won't zip. I have the consequence of, oh my God, I'm going to feel like shit for the next probably 3 to 4 days. I'm
Yeah.
going to be tired. I'm going to have no energy, which is then just going to snowball into every other aspect of my life. I'm not going to want to go to the gym. I'm not going to want to do anything because my body just rejects that food.
Yep.
Um, and so, but again, it took me time to learn that discipline. I would say, um, I didn't just go cold turkey
Yeah.
overnight. I would still try to have it like here and there, but then now I absolutely do not mess with it because I have learned the consequences
Yeah. Yeah.
that I don't like.
Well, that's good. And again, that comes back to your self-reflection that you do. I myself, I think that this is the one year that in the past handful of years, I'm only actually gonna have one Thanksgiving meal. I've dinner out with my family on Saturday. That's not a Thanksgiving meal, that's a birthday dinner. But then Thanksgiving night is the only thing that I have. So really that just leads me that, from what I've already been doing, what I'll do for next week is control all the meals that I can, which will be all of them except for those two meals. So they'll all be well controlled for myself. On Thursday for Thanksgiving, I will probably moderate and kind of shorten up what my carbs are with my main meals and my fats and things like that. Stick with more lean options and lower carb foods during the day, and just fill up on protein and veggies mainly, leading up to that Thanksgiving dinner. So I'm still going to hit my protein count for that day. And then whenever I get to dinner that night, because I've controlled things so well, I'm going to enjoy whatever sounds good. Usually that still is not overboard. I'm not going to eat to the point of being absolutely sick. I'm not going to eat every single dessert that's there, but I'm going to enjoy myself and not feel bad about it. And then I'll get right back on track the next day. For those of you, again, that are having multiple of those meals, again, just be protein centric where you can. And control all the meals in between, leading up to, and especially afterwards. Lock back in on all fronts as soon as you can right after that. And one of the big things as well is hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. We haven't talked about that at all in here, but make sure you are drinking plenty of water, especially when you're having these cheat meals. When you're on vacation, when you're having these bigger meals like that, we want to make sure we're staying plenty hydrated. Because most of us are going to retain a lot of water anyway, and we're going to kind of swell up and be bloated for a few days. And the less water you drink going into that, you're going to be worse off. You're going to you're going to retain even more water. You're going to retain even more bloat and things like that if you are dehydrated going into these meals. So make sure, hydrate plenty. But outside of that, though, that's how you should really handle the next 6 weeks overall. And then again, just make sure you're checking in. So no matter really how it goes. But yeah, we won't be here for our Zoom call next Wednesday, though. So it'll be, I think, whatever the next Wednesday is after that. I think it's like the 29th or something of November. So we'll see you guys back here on that. But other than that, though, we will see you guys tomorrow on check-in day. Everybody have a good rest of your week. And yeah, talk to you guys later.
Bye.